to Supporting Physician Spouses, where we have honest conversations about the real-life challenges and triumphs that come with loving someone in medicine. I'm Kendra.
And I'm Katie. This is the first episode of 3 that we are going to dedicate to emotional, social, and spiritual self-care. Just as a note, we recorded the whole conversation in one long session together, so you might notice that the transitions feel a little more abrupt than usual.
First, we're starting with emotional self-care, not the bubble bath and face mask kind. We're diving into emotional awareness.
What does it look like to name your own feelings, especially when you're used to managing everyone else's?
What happens when we realize we become emotionally invisible to ourselves?
We'll talk about the messy, sacred work of reconnecting with our own emotions, from Mother's Day letdowns to moments of deep connection.
And how honoring our emotional needs isn't just healing, it's human.
Here's our conversation. We hope you enjoy. Before we dive in, Kendra, can we just do a quick check-in? How are you? I want to hear about your weekend.
My weekend was great. So we're recording this a couple of days after Mother's Day. So this past weekend was Mother's Day weekend, and I was at a medical conference, which is awesome, by myself. My husband was not with me at this medical conference, and he knows that like my whole life, for Mother's Day, all I ever want is to be in a hotel room by myself in my pajamas. I was there presenting on a panel with our mutual friend, Dr. Sarah Grimmer. She and I were on a panel talking specifically about physician family wellness and the research I've done and the research that she's done. And it was fantastic. So it was a great weekend at a nice hotel doing things that I am absolutely passionate about with people that I truly care about.
Oh, that is so good. So I giggled by my weekend. So like you just mentioned, it was Mother's Day and I had the textbook Mother's Day in residency moment. So my husband has been working swing shifts with his rotation. He got home late. Technically, it was Sunday morning, and then he had woken up. He was halfway through making us a fun biscuit breakfast, and he got a call that someone had come in and he was on call to help deliver this patient. So it was like so, I don't know, dumbfounding. Like, of course this is happening on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And I think we're both just so tired and shocked that it was like, okay. And he was having a hard time because he was like, I'm so sad. We had so many plans for the day. I was really proud of both of us because we were able to take deep breaths, know that what he was being called in for was a beautiful moment, right? To help someone bring a baby into this world. And I said, go celebrate that, Mom.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I got to put some of what we've talked about to work. We talked about last time that movement is kind of my keystone physical habit. And we go to church on Sundays, so I decided we're going to ride our bikes to church. I just felt like I needed to kind of bike out some of that stress energy, and it really set me up for success.
Good. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Well, today we're digging deeper into the parts of self-care that aren't always visible, your emotional needs. You know, the ones we often push aside while managing everything else.
For a long time, I felt kind of like a duck on the pond, you know, the ones that you feel like look so graceful on top. And I know I've been given comments that you make motherhood look so easy, or you make this journey look so easy. You know what's happening underneath is like my feet are just moving and I'm just trying to keep afloat. So though I can check the boxes of getting through day to day, life can still feel pretty overwhelming, and it's easy for me to feel disconnected to my family, but to myself, and feel a little lost at the same time.
Excellent. I think you're sharing something that's very relatable to many. And so this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. If you're listening and if you're physically functioning but emotionally exhausted, this episode is for you. All right, so let's start with the reality that many physician spouses live in. This is, like you described, you're carrying the weight of your household, managing the kids, maybe working and supporting a partner who has a very emotionally intense career. And that is a lot. We don't want to understate that, you know, that is hard work.
Yeah, and even though you might not be able to perform the surgery or write the orders, you're holding just as much emotionally and mentally. And I'll never forget the day when my spouse vouched to one of his peers that what I do at home, raising the kids, is way harder than medical school. His peer giggled, like, oh, ha, like that's a cute and nice thing to say. And he was like, no joke. It is exhausting. It is so much harder. The logistics, the worry, the transitional stress, never ending to do lists. And I'm in that phase right now where I get like one kid having big emotions, and then we kind of work through that, and then it's the next kid, and then it's the third kid. So by the third kid, by the end of the day, I'm frazzled because like modeling and teaching them appropriate ways to and helpful ways to navigate those big emotions is a like next level mental work.
Yeah, it absolutely is. As you were talking, I was reminded of something that did happen this weekend at that medical conference. There were two incidents that, I mean, you don't usually think you're going to cry at a medical conference, but my eyes absolutely teared up. And one was we were in a big ballroom. It was the House of Delegates session. And so they were going through kind of nominating who the delegates were going to be for this year. And one of the gentlemen, he'd been selected and he stood up and he was thanking everybody and kind of expressing gratitude for having been there. And then they show his face on like the Jumbotron and he's visibly getting choked up as he said, I couldn't have done it without my wife. And he couldn't speak anymore. He just kind of pointed to her and was so
Mm.
emotional. And then to hear the president of the medical association as he was inducted also thank his wife and his family. So many people do get it, that it really is hard and that this is such an effort of teamwork and partnership to have it really, really work well. We all hope that our relationships function like that we're both each other's biggest supporters and that we're there for those moments and that we see how much each other contributes to our individual successes. So uh, you sharing that just reminded me of that precious moment that I got to witness and be a part of.
Can I ask you something? We'll see
Yes.
if we keep this or not, but that sounded like a really beautiful moment that you
Oh,
experienced, right? You got to witness. I have a hard time sometimes hearing that narrative of I couldn't have risen to this success without my spouse. Um, and in this case, particularly my wife. And I believe it, I feel it, and I'm like grateful for that acknowledgement. But sometimes I'm like, well, like I don't want to be on the support staff my whole life. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. How do you kind of navigate those feelings or process that yourself or in moments like this?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to have a great answer having not given it much thought, but I do recognize that my husband could do what he's doing without me.
Hmm.
Like he's capable of doing that. And we know lots of physicians who have very successful careers who aren't partnered and don't have a family. I think there's just a sweetness that is added to our lives when we go through life and difficult things with another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that'll tie back to some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, as far as like emotional self care and having a relationship is a big part of what gives our life meaning and purpose and makes it feel just so rewarding. My husband's a brain surgeon. I'm not doing brain surgery. And this is, certainly wonderful, but it's not the same level of difficulty. But both he and I have this mutual understanding that what I do is sweeter because of him, and what he does is sweeter and is more successful for both of us because we recognize that. I'm not sure if that's a good enough answer, and
Hmm.
maybe I'll have to work on fleshing out something a little bit better, but life is better when you can share it with somebody, and he can do it
Yeah.
by himself, but neither of us want to.
Yeah. I think while you were talking, I was kind of thinking of like rock climbers and how sometimes like you do need the belayer, right? You do need someone
Yes,
like
that's an important
anchoring
part.
you a little bit. That's an important part. And to be acknowledged for that work, I think feels good. But maybe it's the season that sometimes we find ourselves in where there's not enough like swing where sometimes I get to climb or he gets to climb. But I love your
Yeah.
perspective of our physician spouses could totally do this alone. I think you're right. Maybe not with a well-rounded life or with a family in tow, but I really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. And maybe next time you ask me, I'll have a different answer, but that's the one that came today.
Totally.
Okay, so I do want to share this though, that one of the things that I see all the time in coaching women who are, so used to managing everybody else's emotions is that they have a tendency to become emotionally invisible to themselves. They're exhausted and they just can't name why. They're numb, but they're still very high functioning.
Yeah. I mean, that was me. I don't want to say like that was me like 20 minutes ago. I have been flow through this, but when we started working together, I've never continuously been in this high stress, kind of numb state that you were talking about. I just didn't feel like I had time to slow down, to take a breather, to feel, or worse, that my feelings weren't even important compared to those of in my family. And I only really checked in on my emotions when I was feeling like I've hit rock bottom and I
Yeah.
need to figure this out. That's when I would get to my journal.
You do touch on something, and that's, when we suppress our emotions, that's not a signal of strength. That isn't something that makes us stronger. It actually makes us weaker. And in some cases, it can even make us sick. So, as we continue talking about emotional self care, I want you to consider that this is how we stay connected to our humanity. It's something that we all need. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how smart you are, or how fine you think you are. Everybody needs this. And so, it really does start with recognizing what you are feeling. And that
Mm-hmm.
might take some time to even get there. And then once you can recognize what you're feeling, giving yourself the space to feel it without feeling bad about it. So you kind of mentioned that, like, if I feel angry or upset with my spouse, then there's something wrong with that because he's working so hard or he's trying his best rather than just honoring that I feel angry or I feel sad or I feel mad and letting yourself cry or letting someone else comfort you. So I would be curious, Katie, like, what is your typical response when someone asks you how you're doing? Like somebody at church or somebody at the gym, you know, how you doing, Katie?
If it's someone I trust, I'll typically say things are hard, which is interesting. I'm not really sharing my emotion. And then I go to describe the situation. So maybe I don't do very much emotional reflection with other people. Um, so that's actually interesting observation. I'm just learning about myself.
In that respect, you're probably doing better than most because what a lot of people will do is, they'll get that question and it's just the knee jerk response of, I'm fine or everything's good, but everything's not good. And yes, with the right people, sometimes you can tell who's just asking out of politeness. And so you just return the politeness and you can go on your way. But that doesn't actually create connection with people. And going back to that emotional connection, it's for everybody. We're all humans, we all need it. And not letting people see or not being exactly truthful with how you actually are doing kind of puts you at odds with what you want. Let's use the example of I'm lonely. And instead of saying I'm lonely, you're like, I'm fine. Everything's great. Well, that's somebody who, if you had actually said, I'm actually kind of lonely right now, I've found that people generally really want to help. They want to know how you're doing. And if there's something they can do, they want to do it. And so
Mm-hmm.
often I've
Mm-hmm.
probably made myself more lonely by not being honest with others about how lonely I actually am. And so,
Yeah.
back to your point earlier, maybe I don't know what the feeling is. I don't know the truth of what I'm feeling. I just know that something doesn't feel good. And so instead of talking about the feeling, I talk about the logistics of what's happening. And then I leave other people to infer from that what it is that I'm feeling. So you can't
Yeah.
see this, but Katie is nodding her head.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I remember having such hard days and just praying to God, asking for someone to just swoop in and help, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's not how it works, and I've had to get really good at asking for what I need help with and creating the framework that I needed for that connecting with ladies so that I could be emotionally honest. Every time we sit down at an activity together, we can drop in on a real raw question. In fact, on Sunday, which was Mother's Day, I was able to ask, what are your guys' feelings this Mother's Day? Knowing that some are dealing with like miscarriage loss or missing family. This is their first time not celebrating with their mom. And I'm just really grateful for that kind of connection I have with others.
Yeah, did you get some good responses as you probed for feelings?
Yeah, from
Good.
some I did. I think some of these ladies, I think, avoided maybe jumping in, knowing emotions might come. It wasn't really the place
Yeah.
to get emotional. But another did share. My husband gave me this necklace with a rainbow on it, and that had 5 arches
Hmm.
symbolizing the 5 losses that they have had. Um, which was really brave and really beautiful that she shared that.
Yeah, what a thoughtful gift too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, Before we jump into the social part, I this isn't a quiz show, Katie, but I am going to ask you some questions, okay?
Okay.
How many different emotions do you regularly feel? Like, do you have three that are your most common? Do you have like
Hmm.
seven? Like, if you had to name emotional states that you've been in or recently have been in.
Yeah. Like peace, joy, contentment, frustration, angry, tired. I don't know, that's 6. That's what came off my head real quick.
Okay, I'm just impressed
Confused,
that you
maybe.
started off. You started off with the positive one, so that's really impressive. Again, not a
Yay.
game show, but if this was a game show, you would get a standing ovation. All right, let's talk about crying. Do you let yourself cry?
Yes. I have to work through anger typically to get to crying, though.
Okay. Is that usually the emotion that elicits crying is anger?
I think anger is just my first front to, I feel
Okay.
so sad inside that I want to cry, but that it just comes out as angry. And then I kind of recluse, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed that now I've come to tears.
Okay. Do you happen to have any rules around emotions like or crying? Like I can't cry in front of the kids or I can't cry more than a couple of times a month. I mean, do you have
Hmm.
any do you catch
I mean,
yourself?
I'm pretty free flowing with my emotions. Um, Crying in public is something that I think most people try not to do, and I'm definitely one to hold it in.
Why is
Moment.
that?
I think most of it is because it hits me in a way that if people ask what's going on, I'm not sure. And I don't know how to explain it. So it's like, I don't know how to navigate this kind of awkward situation while I'm feeling very emotional. I had a really, really cool, and I would even say sacred moment recently. I got to speak in front of a bigger congregation with my church recently, and some things that were pretty vulnerable in my own faith journey. And I think there was one speaker after me, and then the congregation sang a song. And during that song, I kind of got this impression that I wasn't going to get noticed or like praised. And I kind of thrive off of that external validation. Um, and right then, I just felt like the wave of emotion starting to hit me. I was like, that was really hard for me to share and to not be recognized for kind of being brave, I guess. Just was really hard for me. Once the meeting ended, I was like, okay, which aisle can I go down that I know the least amount of people so I can just kind of get out of here? But I texted my husband and I said, I'm in my car before I get home. Are you okay if I just go and park to kind of feel these emotions? Where it would have been really easy to just come home and help get the kids to bed and make myself busy to kind of forget it. But
Hmm.
it ended up lending to some answers that I have been praying about and pondering on, um, through feeling emotion, sadness, that typically it's kind of hard to get myself there.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad I'm asking some questions
I
today because
know.
that was absolutely beautiful. Because you're right. How often do we have that uncomfortable feeling and then we just try to push it away? And then we get busy and it's like we never deal with it. We just put it off until the next time and then it comes back again like double and we just
Mm.
kind of get stuck in this loop. As I was asking you that question of do you have rules around emotion? Sunday at church. If you're listening, you should know Katie and I we go to church a lot. During the lesson, I've had like allergies for a little bit and I was contributing something and I went to speak and I got choked up and I found myself saying, I'm not emotional, I just have allergies. And so I don't know if it's judgment about crying in front of people or it's like my own fear being revealed to myself
Mm.
that I don't like crying in front of people because I do like to maintain control. And I feel when I'm crying, I am more vulnerable and I feel out of control. And that is uncomfortable for me. But I'm working really hard to try to be more vulnerable.
Mm.
But in that moment, I realized, oh, like subconsciously, I'm still holding on to that. Like it's not okay to be emotional like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love that you were like, let's get curious about this. Why did I say
Yeah,
that?
obviously, I'm still thinking some part of it that would not be okay.
Okay, listeners, this is one of those abrupt stops. We are going to end this conversation here on emotional self care. And remember, emotional self care isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline.
Whether you're the one holding everything together at home, working through the weight of constant transitions, or just trying to name what you're actually feeling, we see you.
As you move through the rest of your day, we invite you to pause, check in, and ask yourself, how am I really?
And if the answer is, I'm not sure, that's okay. This is the beginning of deeper awareness and deeper connection.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time with part 2, where we dive into the components of social self care.
Until then, share this episode with someone who might need a gentle reminder that self-care is not selfish, it's essential.
We'll see you next time on Supporting Physician Spouses.